By the time the first blizzard hit, Stephen Reeves had already dug a room beneath his barn floor. The town called him a man burying his kids under cattle, but they didn't know what he'd discovered. 3 weeks earlier, none of that had happened yet. The Reeves family still had a roof, but not for long.
You've got 1 hour, Reeves. Take your brats and get off my land.
Jacob and Emma clung to their father's coat, shivering in the autumn wind.
Papa, it's so cold. Where will we go?
We'll be all right. The cattle will keep us warm. I promise.
The deed says different. Now move, or I'll have the sheriff move you.
That evening, with his children huddled in the hay, Stephen Reeves stared at the barn floor and began to dig. He would build a room beneath the cattle, where their heat might keep his children alive. The next morning, long before the sun cleared the ridge, Stephen Reeves drove his shovel into the barn floor. Jacob and Emma sat on a hay bale, watching their father's back bend and rise.
Papa, why are we digging under the cows?
Their warmth seeps into the ground. It'll keep us alive when the snow comes.
A neighbor passing by the barn laughed and called out that Reeves was burying his children alive.
Let them laugh. They'll see what a hole in the ground can do.
That night, by lantern light, he dug until his palms blistered, and the cold stole the feeling from his fingers. Above him, the children slept in the hay, their breath misting in the freezing air. By the end of the first week, the hole was deep enough that he had to use a ladder to climb in and out.
A few more feet, then we'll have a room no wind can reach.
On the 10th day, the east wall of the hole gave way. A slab of frozen earth broke loose and slammed into Stephen's shoulder.
Pain seared through my shoulder, but the fear cut deeper. If the hole collapsed, we'd have nothing.
He clawed himself free, cradling his bruised shoulder, and saw the earthen wall had crumbled into a pile.
It's just a bruise. Don't you worry. We'll shore it up with timber.
That same night, Emma began to cough. It was a wet, hollow sound that never quite stopped.
Papa, I can't stop coughing. It hurts deep in my chest.
Not her. I already buried Clara. I can't bury my little girl too.
Stephen ignored the throbbing in his shoulder and dragged a heavy timber across the weakened section. Later, with the children wrapped in every scrap of cloth they owned, he returned to digging by lantern light.
I'll finish this room if it kills me. The cold is coming, and there's no one else.
On the 15th day, Stephen carried down the last armload of straw and an old quilt. The cramped chamber was finished.
Is this really where we'll live now, Papa?
For now. Just until winter passes. The cows above will keep us warm.
He sealed the trapdoor behind them, cutting off the last sliver of freezing air. In the heavy darkness, the children pressed against him, their small bodies trembling.
Once a fox dug a den under a great oak. The roots kept out every storm.
Gradually, the children's breathing slowed, their shivering fading into the stillness of the earth.
The warmth is real. It's seeping through the floor right now.
When Stephen pushed open the trapdoor at dawn, frost lined the barn walls. But down below they had not frozen. It wasn't warm. Not yet. But there was no wind, and that was the difference between life and death. The next morning, Stephen felt a thin stream of cold air slicing across his neck from a gap in the wall.
Cold ain't the real killer. It's the moving air. If I can stop the drafts, we might just live.
He mixed mud and straw, then pressed it into every seam until the walls were sealed tight.
Papa, I am not cold anymore. It's like a warming stone.
For the first time in weeks, Emma's cough quieted, and both children managed a fragile smile. The next time Stephen walked into town for supplies, Robert Dunham was waiting on the store porch, a smirk on his face.
I hear you've got your children living like moles, burying them under cattle. What kind of coward does that?
They're alive. And they'll still be alive when the snowdrifts are taller than your pride.
Stephen didn't wait for a reply. He walked back to the barn, the sting of the words less sharp than the wind.
Let the town talk. When the real cold hits, they'll see whose children are warm.
3 days later, a cold snap rolled down from the mountains, freezing everything above ground solid as iron. But below the barn floor, the dugout remained bearable, the herd's heat seeping through the earth like a stove. Stephen rummaged through their supplies. The sack of flour was nearly empty, the dried meat down to a few strips.
I need to trade in town. Stay close and keep the trapdoor shut until I get back.
The walk to town was brutal, the cold gnawing through his coat with every step. He traded a worn harness for a few loaves of bread and a bit of lard, enduring the storekeeper's cold stare. As he wrapped the bread, a mutter from two farmers reached his ears. Dunham's herd was already dropping in the cold.
Dunham's herd is dying while mine keep us warm. The man who threw us out might freeze in his own house.
He hurried back to the barn, the bread clutched against his chest, each shadow feeling like a warning.
The real storm hasn't even hit yet. When it does, this room will be the only thing between my children and the grave.
The blizzard arrived without warning. A wall of white that slammed into the barn with a shriek like a wounded animal. Stephen nailed extra boards across the door, his fingers already numb inside his gloves. Then he climbed down into the dugout and pulled the trapdoor shut, packing straw around its edges. The wind howled through the rafters, rattling the timbers until the barn itself seemed to moan. Down below, Jacob and Emma pressed against their father, their faces buried in his coat.
Listen to me. That wind is screaming, but it can't get in here. We're safe.
Above them, the cattle lowed nervously, their hooves shuffling in the darkness. The dugout remained still, the trapped air unmoving, like being buried in a pocket of the earth. He whispered that he wouldn't let anything happen to them, not the cold, not the storm. The storm's first fury was muffled by the earth, but they knew this was only the beginning. By the second day of the storm, Emma's cough deepened into a fever so hot her skin burned to the touch.
She's burning up. If I don't find a doctor, she won't last the night. Jacob, you watch your sister. Don't open the trapdoor for anyone but me.
Stephen pulled on his gloves and climbed the ladder into the roaring white. He stumbled through drifts up to his waist, shouting for a doctor until his throat was raw. The first house gave him nothing but a slammed door and a hissed refusal. Every home turned him away, some with pity, most with anger. No one would venture out. Stephen fell to his knees in a drift, the cold biting through to the bone, his hope draining into the snow. He crawled back into the dugout, empty-handed, pulling Emma's feverish body against his chest.
I won't let her go. Not like Clara.
The storm paused just long enough for Stephen to hear the desperate pounding on the barn door.
Help. Please, my little girl is freezing. Is there anyone inside?
Stephen climbed the ladder, his heart hammering, and peered through a crack in the boards.
2 more mouths to feed, with almost nothing left. But if I turn them away, they're dead.
I heard you have a warm room under the cattle. Please, my Lily is nearly frozen. I beg you.
Stephen threw back the bar and pulled them inside, just as the wind picked up again.
God bless you. I didn't know where else to go.
Down below, you first. Hand me the child.
He descended into the dugout, and Nancy lowered the limp body of Lily into his waiting arms. The 5 of them now shared the cramped space, their breath mixing in the warm, still air. The storm returned with a fury that shook the barn to its foundation, timbers groaning under the weight of the wind. Below ground, the dugout was cramped, but still, the body heat of 5 people mixing with the herd's warmth above.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't know how I can ever repay you. We had nowhere else to go.
Lily's eyes fluttered open for the first time, a weak whimper escaping her blue-tinged lips.
She's coming around. Keep her close to the warm spot. We'll get through this.
Stephen climbed the ladder into the barn, the cold biting his face as he pushed open the trap door. The cattle were restless, their ribs beginning to show. He poured the last of the hay into the trough.
If the herd dies, this whole dugout becomes a frozen grave. They're not just cattle, they're our furnace.
He returned to the dugout, where the children had fallen into an uneasy sleep, their small bodies stacked together. Nancy met his eyes in the dim light, And for a moment, there was only shared exhaustion and hope. A distant shout cut through the howl of the wind. Dunham's herd is dropping. They'll be dead by morning. Stephen froze in the barn, his hand on the pitchfork. The words struck him like a physical blow.
If our herd dies, there's no warmth left. This dugout becomes a frozen grave.
What can I do? Tell me how to help.
Together they climbed into the barn and dragged the last bales of hay from the loft. Breathless in the freezing dark, Stephen attacked the frozen water trough with an axe, ice shards flying in the lantern light.
Protect the herd. Every breath they take is a breath my children get to keep.
I can fill the buckets from the well if you break the ice. We're in this together now.
Then pray this storm breaks soon. Pray the hay holds out.
The room beneath the barn was no longer just a hiding place. It was the fragile link in a chain of life, anchored by the herd above. The pounding on the barn door came again, weaker this time, almost lost beneath the wind.
Reeves, please. I am freezing. My herd is dead.
Stephen threw back the bar, and Robert stumbled inside, collapsing to his knees on the frozen straw.
You have to let me into the warm room. I'll freeze up here.
You threw my children into the cold. You mocked us. Now you want my warmth.
I was a fool. Please, Reeves, I am begging you.
Stephen stared at the man who had taken everything from him. Behind Stephen, his children watched from the trapdoor opening.
You can stay in the barn, there, in that corner, not the dugout. Consider it more than you gave us.
Robert nodded, too broken to argue, and collapsed against the hay.
Mercy isn't forgiveness. It's just not murder.
The storm reached its peak, the barn timbers groaning as if the whole structure might be torn apart. Below ground, the lantern flickered, but held steady, the earthen walls swallowing the noise.
He's going to freeze up there alone. Can I live with that on my conscience?
He climbed the ladder into the frigid barn and found Robert barely conscious, lips blue, shudders racking his body.
This doesn't change anything. I am still not bringing you down.
Robert's fingers curled into the wool, too cold to speak, his eyes barely open but fixed on Stephen. Stephen descended back into the warmth, his hands trembling not from cold, but from the weight of the choice he'd made.
You gave him a chance. That's more than some would do.
A chance. That's all any of us have left.
Outside, the blizzard raged on, indifferent to the fragile pocket of life, clinging to warmth beneath the cattle. The storm broke sometime before dawn, the wind dying so suddenly, the silence felt like a blow. Stephen pushed open the trap door, and was blinded by sunlight, glaring off endless, unbroken snow. He stumbled into the barn, his breath catching. The walls stood, the roof held, and in the stalls the cattle stirred. They were gaunt, ribby, but alive. Warm steam still rose from their backs. Through a gap in the barn wall, he saw the field that had been Robert's pride, now a graving finished naturally, now a graveyard of frozen, twisted carcasses. Robert pushed past him, barefoot in the snow, and fell to his knees among his dead herd.
I love them. Everything gone.
My herd lived. His died. That could have been us.
Nancy emerged beside Stephen, Lily asleep in her arms, and the two stood in the doorway, looking at the ruin. The world had been reordered overnight. The man who had nothing now had everything he needed. Word spread through the valley with the speed of the thaw. The Reeves family was alive, warm beneath the cattle. Townsfolk, who had shuttered their windows, now walked through the snow, drawn by a rumor of a room that needed no fire. They found Jacob and Emma outside, pink-cheeked, shaping a snowman with clumsy mittened hands. Nancy stood in the barn doorway, Lily awake in her arms, a child the town had already counted as dead. A woman set a pot of hot broth at Stephen's feet and said, "We were wrong about you, Reeves."
It wasn't my doing. The herd kept us warm. That's all.
Robert watched from a shadowed corner, his coat still stiff with frost, his pride frozen with his cattle. By noon, strangers from 2 farms over arrived with shovels, asking questions about the dugout beneath the barn floor.
The mockery has turned to curiosity. Now the whole valley might survive if they listen.
The room beneath the cattle was no longer a secret. It was becoming a legend. And the man they'd called mad was now the man with the answer. Robert Dunham emerged from his corner, hat in hand, and walked toward Stephen through the watching crowd.
Reeves, I'll tear up the eviction paper. The land is yours. I was wrong.
I don't need your paper. This place is mine already, by sweat and by blood. The children are alive because of what I built, not what you gave.
Then, at least, let me make it legal. For their sake.
You can't give me what I already own. You have nothing left to offer.
Robert's face crumpled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He turned, shoulders slumped, and walked into the white nothing. Stephen watched him go, his face unreadable, until the figure vanished among the drifts. The man who had taken everything from him now had nothing. Not even the power to make amends, with the crowd gone and the snow melting in runnels. Stephen found Nancy sitting on a stump, stitching his torn coat.
You saved us, Stephen. Let me help you now with the mending, the cooking, the children.
Stephen looked at her hands, the needle moving steady, and something cracked open in his chest.
She's still here. Not because she has nowhere else, but because she chose to stay. I'd be glad for the help. The children need someone kind.
Nearby, Jacob, Emma, and Lily built a lopsided snowman. Their laughter, the first real sound of joy in months. For a moment, Stephen let himself watch, the ghost of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth.
Maybe this is what it feels like to start again.
As dusk fell, the barn began to glow from within. The lantern lit, the cows settled, the trap door pulsing with golden light. The room beneath the cattle had become more than shelter. It was now the heart of a new, unlikely family. By the following week, farmers from across the valley arrived with shovels and questions, their faces eager for the secret. Stephen led them into the barn, lifting the trapdoor to show the earthen room below.
The trick ain't the roof. It's the wind. Stop the drafts. You stop the cold.
He pointed to the cattle steaming in their stalls.
Their body heat rises, then seeps down. Below the frost line, it's warmer than you'd believe.
A weathered farmer nodded, crouched down, and began sketching out a similar dugout in the dirt. That evening, a small fire flickered outside the barn, the first real gathering the town had shared in months. They passed around broth and bread, the same people who had mocked him now seeking his advice. Stephen stood with Nancy, watching the firelight play on his children's faces, and felt something settle inside him. The room beneath the cattle was no longer a secret. It was a gift the whole valley would carry into the next winter. At dawn, Robert Dunham shouldered a small pack, his clothes still stiff with frost, his face hollow. He passed the barn one last time, pausing where the warm glow leaked through the cracks.
Warmth in that barn. Warmth I'll never feel again.
His hand rose as if to knock, then fell limp at his side. A woman fetching water saw him and quickly looked away. No one called out. No one stopped him. He turned toward the road, leading out of the valley, his boots crunching on frozen mud. The snow began to fall again, softening the world, swallowing his figure inch by inch. By midday, the valley was quieter, as if a weight had been lifted. The man who had evicted Stephen Reeves was now the one without a roof, a wanderer with no herd and no home. Spring crept into the valley like a held breath finally released. Icicles wept from the barn eaves. One morning, Stephen threw open the barn doors, and the cows stumbled into sunlight, blinking at a world turned green. Jacob and Emma ran into the pasture, their laughter rising like birds, the memory of the dark dugout already fading. The herd lumbered into the pasture, grazing on tender shoots. They were thin, but alive, living proof that warmth could be made from what you had. Nancy stood at the barn doorway, Lily in her arms, a calm smile on her face. She would stay through the summer and beyond.
Papa, will we ever have to live under the cows again?
We'll always have the herd above us. and that means we'll always carry the warmth we need.
He looked out over the land, the barn solid behind him, and knew that no winter could take away what they had built together. The dugout, empty now and silent, would remain a monument to ingenuity born of desperation, a room where love kept them warm. The family, healed and whole, walked forward into the sunlight, their past a foundation, their future as wide as the thawing fields. That evening, Stephen walked alone to the barn as the setting sun painted the fields in gold and rust. He rested his hand against the wooden door, the grain rough under his palm, and looked up at the darkening sky.
We made it, Clara. The children are safe.
He didn't hear an answer, but the warm breeze felt like one. Through the open door, the trapdoor was still visible, a quiet monument to the winter they'd survived. He thought of the herd above, the warmth that seeped down, and knew that love could be built from the simplest things. Then he turned and walked toward the house, where lanterns glowed and laughter spilled into the dusk. The room beneath the cattle would be remembered, not as a hole in the ground, but as a place where a father's love kept his family alive.
I'll raise them right, Clara. I promise.
And in the quiet of the fading day, the barn stood like a sentinel, guarding the memory of warmth. Years passed, and the story of the room beneath the barn became a legend in the valley. Other families, remembering what Stephen Reeves had done, dug their own rooms beneath their cattle. They called it Reeves' Warmth, a simple truth passed from neighbor to neighbor, a room where cold was stopped, not by fire, but by the slow, steady heat of the herd above. The original barn, weathered and gray, still stood, and in its floor the trapdoor remained. Generations later, children would descend those same wooden rungs, voices hushed, as if entering a sacred place. And whenever a winter storm howled, the people remembered. Warmth can come from the simplest acts of love, the herd above, the earth below, and a father's resolve. That was the true furnace. Sometimes warmth comes not from fire, but from the herd above, and in the quiet, the cattle lowed, their breath a gentle reminder of the warmth that never truly left.